I want to talk about feeling safe. I remember I had a client a while ago, and we were filming, and I spoke to them, and I asked them a question about feeling safe. And what they said was that they'd never had a sensation of feeling safe. They had no memory throughout their childhood and growing up and being in the world today of feeling safe. And I think that it's hard for me to relate to that. I can relate to some of it, but it's hard to relate to the fact that this idea of never feeling safe. And then I was thinking about what is it? What has to happen for us to feel safe? What has to happen for me to feel safe? And I go back through, not me personally, obviously, but when I reflect on evolution and about how humans came about and about some of the things that evolved to make us such a successful animal in terms of growing as a species and continuing to grow as a species. And one of the things that evolved is language. And I'm going to share a couple of ideas here that came to my mind. One is that when I've read about language as part of our evolution, it helped us communicate, it helped us create strategies for hunting, for working together. But it was also a mechanism by which we felt safe. Humans are a social animal. And in those social groups, it was very important to be part of the group. Because if you were outcast from that group, then you were much more likely to be prone to predatory animals. You might die of starvation. Your children were unlikely to grow to maturity. And so it was incredibly important to be part of that social group that you were attached to, because that's where you felt safe. And I've also read that one of the powerful dimensions of language that evolved as human beings is the idea of gossip. That gossip actually evolved as part of a mechanism by which we communicated to understand the social structure, the social hierarchy of our own group, and to know where we stood in that to help us feel safe. It also goes to this idea that one of the greatest fears in life is public speaking. The joke is people are more afraid of death than public speaking. And I think that's part of this idea of if you spoke out, then it's possible that you are more likely to be excluded from the group and lose your social standing and then be at great risk. So feeling safe is very strongly linked to being able to speak and to be heard in a sympathetic and empathetic way. And I've been thinking over the last few days about how views that would not be part of the norm, shall we say unique views of the world, another way of saying that might be extreme views of the world, have a much more powerful voice now. Over the last 10 years, social media has seen ideas about politics, medicine, finance, culture, government, be expressed in a much more extreme way than it was, when I was young. And those views continue to polarize and continue to diverge. And I think it's because of this need to feel safe. And it might sound odd that, how does the growth of extremist views, which creates conflict and division, how does that relate to feeling safe? And I think that what social media enables, and what it has enabled, is when I have a view of the world, I can express it. And if I have a particularly unique view of the world, I can express it. And because social media is so universal, it's much more likely I'm able to find somebody else with that view, or another group of people with that view. And we don't have to meet. We can meet in the virtual world. We can meet in the electronic world. And so we might be spread in Australia and New Zealand and China and Canada, in South America. It doesn't matter where we are in the world. It's quite easy to find other people with our view. And even if I have a particularly unique view of the world, it's unlikely it's completely unique in amongst a population of 7 billion people, half of which have access to the internet. So I think the rise of extremism, or the rise of this division and radical thinking, comes down to that human need, that base human need to feel safe, to be able to know that you're speaking and using your voice and being heard, and there's someone else there to hear you who is part of your social circle, who becomes part of your family. So I think we're fulfilling our fundamental human needs. And it's happening in a way that, I'm not sure how that's going to unfold. If we look at coronavirus, so many stories emerging, from its just flu to it's the most extreme version story I've heard was it's a digitized RNA, whatever that is, that's activated by 5G. And so it brings together, this kind of anti-5G, this anti-viral thing and vaccines and all sorts of stuff. It's all wrapped up into one huge story. And people expressing that story find someone else to listen who wants to participate in that story as well. And they found their safe space. So, I just wanted to reflect on that today, that this growth of extremism is actually an expression of the desire to feel safe.